Right now, a massive storm system is threading its way across the central United States, and over the next several days, it is going to deliver a relentless combination of severe thunderstorms, flash flooding, and one of the most dangerous heat buildups we have seen across the western interior this summer. We are talking about a weather pattern that stretches from the fire-scorched Pacific Northwest all the way to the Great Lakes, from the bone-dry desert southwest to the cornfields of Iowa. And virtually every region in between is going to feel some consequence of what is unfolding right now. Flash flooding is the primary threat from the mid-Mississippi Valley up through the Great Lakes corridor. Damaging winds will be in the mix, and lurking at the far end of this forecast is a sprawling heat dome that is already building and is going to push temperatures in parts of the central and southern plains to levels that are simply shocking for the month of August. This is one of those forecast windows where the pattern evolves dramatically from one day to the next, so staying informed is not optional. Let's walk through exactly what is coming and when. To understand this forecast, you have to start with the bigger picture, the structure of the atmosphere and how energy is moving across the country. Right now, there is no single dominant textbook-style low-pressure system controlling things from coast to coast. Instead, what we are dealing with is a shortwave trough, a relatively compact disturbance that has been developing across the Central Plains and Midwest over the last day or so. These shortwave features are smaller, they are harder to forecast with precision several days out. And they tend to generate weather that evolves quickly and can surprise even well-supported models. Is the operating environment we're in right now, and it explains why the forecast for this weekend carries meaningful uncertainty. What the atmosphere lacks right now in terms of a major synoptic powerhouse, it more than makes up for with the combination of instability, moisture, and boundary interactions that are stacking up across the central part of the country. The jet stream and mid-level flow pattern confirm that the energy responsible for this stretch of active weather is firmly anchored, and it is going to keep firing rounds of storms and rainfall across a corridor that already has soggy soils and communities that need to pay close attention to any flooding alerts that get issued in the coming days. Let's talk about the cold front first, because it is arguably the most dramatic immediate story in this forecast. A very strong cold front is pushing through the northern plains and Midwest this morning, and it is doing exactly what a strong August cold front is supposed to do, dropping temperatures sharply and quickly. In North Dakota and across much of the upper Midwest, temperatures have already dropped into the 40s and even into the upper 30s in some spots. If you're waking up this morning in Minnesota, Wisconsin, or the Dakotas, you are reaching for a jacket because it is genuinely cold outside. This is a notable contrast with what people further south in the country are experiencing right now, and it sets the stage for everything that's going to happen over the next 48 to 72 hours. As we move through today, the cold front is tracking through Minnesota and pushing southward and eastward. Behind the front, high temperatures across most of the Midwest are going to struggle to get out of the 60s and 70s. Parts of Nebraska will see rain throughout the day, and for those locations, temperatures might not even climb out of the low 60s. There are even spots where upper 50s are possible for today's afternoon high, which for August is genuinely unusual. If you are in Minneapolis today, you will be looking at around 80 degrees, pleasant weather that stands in sharp relief to what is happening further south and west. Over in Fargo, temperatures will hover around 77 degrees. For residents of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley today, take the opportunity to enjoy the relatively comfortable conditions, because this quiet window is going to be short-lived before the next rounds of activity fire up. Just south of the cold front, the atmosphere is already cooking up the setup for today's threats. Across Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois, a meaningful area of showers and thunderstorms is going to be developing throughout the day. This is where the flooding risk begins to take shape. The rain is going to be widespread enough that it bears watching closely, and if you live anywhere in this band from Nebraska through Wisconsin, you need to have your flooding awareness switched on today. Now, severe weather today looks to be relatively limited. The most notable isolated threat is near Omaha, where there could be an elevated hailstorm during the afternoon or evening hours. If you are in the Omaha metro or surrounding communities, keep an eye on radar this afternoon and evening and have your weather alerts enabled on your phone. Outside of that specific area, today looks like a minimal severe weather day in terms of organized threats. The bigger story today is the rain, the cold temperatures, and the flooding potential that comes with persistent, slow-moving precipitation on what in some areas are already wet soils. Tomorrow changes the equation. That is when the setup gets more energized and the threat levels climb. The area of showers and thunderstorms that develops across Iowa tonight is going to sweep eastward by Wednesday, pushing into the Midwest and eventually reaching Chicago and the surrounding area, extending back toward Indianapolis. For most of Wednesday, this is still primarily a heavy rain story rather than a severe weather story. But here is where you need to pay close attention, because as Wednesday afternoon and evening arrive, the dynamics begin to shift. There is an elevated risk by late Wednesday of large hail damaging winds, and even a very low tornado risk, depending on how the thunderstorm complex evolves throughout the day. The high-resolution models are not currently showing a highly organized severe weather threat for Wednesday, but they do paint a picture of a widespread area of showers and thunderstorms across the Midwest. That picture can change as we close the gap between now and Wednesday afternoon, and it often does with these types of late summer setups. If you live in the Chicago area, Indianapolis, or anywhere in that broad Midwest corridor, Wednesday evening specifically is the time window to stay aware. Have your weather apps active, turn on your notifications, and know where you will shelter if warnings are issued in your area. If you are finding this forecast helpful and you want to stay connected to every update as this pattern evolves, make sure you are subscribed. Hit that notification bell so you do not miss any breaking weather updates. Live streams or severe weather coverage as this situation develops over the next several days. This is the type of weather pattern where things can change quickly and you want to be on the right side of that information. Now, as we push into Thursday, the same storm system that fires storms on Wednesday is expected to weaken as it tracks into the Ohio Valley. Thursday likely does not bring major organized severe weather activity for most of the Ohio Valley, which is relatively good news for that region. However, there is an isolated severe weather threat that may pop up across Nebraska and South Dakota on Thursday. If something does organize there, the primary threats would be large hail and damaging winds, similar in character to what we are watching in the Wednesday timeframe further east. The pattern on Thursday is not expected to be dramatic in most locations, but it is another day where paying attention to local conditions matters. Let's talk about the flooding numbers because they deserve emphasis. Across the Midwest through Friday morning, models including the Rufus model are indicating that a few isolated locations, particularly near St. Louis and Columbia, could see 6 to 7 inches of rainfall before all is said and done. That is an exceptional amount of precipitation for any multi-day period, and in those specific locations, it could create significant flash flooding situations. More broadly, when you look at the entire Midwest region, almost all of it will pick up at least half an inch to an inch of rain over the next several days from this slow-moving frontal boundary. Some locations will land in that 2 to 4 inch range. And the most exposed communities, particularly those near St. Louis or up toward Milwaukee, could be looking at 6 to 8 inches total from this entire event when it concludes. The Weather Prediction Center has already issued a slight risk of excessive rainfall for Wednesday, covering a corridor from Milwaukee and Chicago back through Kansas City and Omaha. A slight risk designation from the Weather Prediction Center means that flash flooding is a realistic possibility for the designated area, not a rare outlier outcome. This is a good time to review your flooding plan right now before any of this rain arrives. Know your evacuation routes. Know whether your neighborhood or basement is prone to flooding. Know what you will do if a flash flood warning is issued in your area. The time to figure that out is now, not when water is already rising. If there is a flood watch or warning issued in your area in the coming days, take it seriously and do not attempt to drive through flooded roads under any circumstances. The weekend picture is where the forecast becomes genuinely complex and where the uncertainty is high enough that we need to walk through both scenarios that the models are presenting. This is important context. The weather that develops this weekend is going to be driven primarily by mesoscale features, meaning smaller scale atmospheric dynamics, rather than the kind of large, well-organized synoptic scale storm system that models can track with high confidence a week in advance. August weather in general is notoriously difficult to forecast at extended ranges for exactly this reason. The month of August frequently sees the balance of severe weather tip toward these smaller scale features that are simply outside the predictable range of models when you are looking 5 or 6 days ahead. There is a low-pressure system located far north of Minnesota, and that system is going to play a potential role in shaping what happens Friday. The European model is carrying a scenario in which a line of thunderstorms develops in Iowa on Friday and then sweeps through Missouri and Illinois. That is a possible scenario, but there is substantial uncertainty attached to it, and it is too early to commit to that solution or rule it out. For Saturday and Sunday, the European model is not currently advertising a significant severe weather threat. That is one picture of the weekend. The GFS model tells a very different story. The GFS is not advertising much for Friday, but becomes notably aggressive for Saturday and Sunday. In the GFS scenario, a low-pressure system develops across South Dakota and northern Nebraska, and that system eventually fuels the potential for significant severe weather in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan on Saturday. By Sunday, that threat extends further across the Midwest. And if that low-pressure development actually occurs, Monday and Tuesday could bring additional storm systems as energy feeds into the central plains. That is a very different outcome than what the European model is painting for the same time period. Both solutions are plausible, given the pattern, and neither can be dismissed. And what this means practically is that the weekend could go either direction. It could turn into a very active severe weather and flooding period across the Midwest and Great Lakes, or it could simply become brutally hot and humid with limited storm activity. We do not know yet, and we will not know with confidence until we are much closer to the weekend. Stay connected to the channel, because as the models converge on an answer, we will be right here covering it. Now let's talk about the heat, because this is the other major story in this forecast, and frankly, it is one of the more alarming aspects of this entire pattern. While people in Minneapolis and Fargo are enjoying temperatures in the 70s and 80s today, the southern and central plains are living in an entirely different world. Dallas and Oklahoma City are approaching 105 to 110 degrees this afternoon. That is dangerous heat by any standard, the kind of heat that kills people who are not careful, the kind of heat that you do not take lightly. If you are in the southern plains right now, heat safety is not something to minimize. Stay hydrated, stay indoors during peak afternoon hours if you can, check on elderly neighbors and family members, and make sure pets have water and shade. As we move through Wednesday, temperatures continue to roar across the central and southern plains. The desert southwest is simultaneously baking under its own extreme heat, compounding the scope of this dangerous heat event across a very broad geographic footprint. And then, as we push toward Thursday and Friday, the heat dome begins to expand northward into the Great Plains, pulling warmer temperatures back into South Dakota and Iowa. Temperatures in those states will once again approach the mid to upper 90s on Thursday and Friday, and a few locations could touch or exceed 100 degrees. By the weekend, the heat threat near Omaha could become extreme in its own right. The GFS model is projecting actual air temperatures, not heat index values, not feels-like numbers, but actual measured air temperatures, approaching 115 degrees in parts of Nebraska and western Iowa by the weekend. That is an extraordinary number for August, and it represents a genuinely life-threatening heat scenario if it materializes. 115 degrees in the shade is dangerous for anyone who is outside for more than a few minutes. It strains power grids, it overwhelms cooling centers, and it is particularly lethal for people without access to air conditioning. Keep this potential outcome on your radar, especially if you are in Nebraska or western Iowa, and start thinking now about what your cooling plan looks like if temperatures approach those kinds of levels this weekend. The heat dome itself is expanding from the desert southwest into the Rockies and out across the Great Plains. High pressure building over the western Atlantic is also contributing to the overall pattern, reinforcing the warmth and keeping a significant portion of the central interior locked into dangerous heat conditions for an extended period. Into Sunday and Monday, there may be some modest improvement in some locations, but the overall pattern is expected to keep temperatures above normal and remain relatively hot through the end of the weekend and into early next week. The GFS is also hinting at a potential big storm system that could bring cooler temperatures to the Midwest by the middle of next week. But that is many days away and carries its own significant uncertainty. We will track that development as we get closer. Now let's turn to the Pacific Northwest and the wildfire situation, because this is a story that deserves its own serious attention. Wildfires have been raging across Idaho, Oregon, and Washington over the last several days. The situation has been severe. The Spokane area experienced a major fire event that damaged or destroyed thousands of homes. That is a devastating loss for the communities involved, and the fire weather threat remains elevated across the Pacific Northwest for the foreseeable future, given the atmospheric pattern. There is some good news embedded in the wildfire forecast. Fire conditions are becoming gradually less and less favorable for new fire starts in the immediate term, meaning the extreme outbreak of fire activity may see some moderation. That is not the same as saying the danger is over, and fire weather remains a serious ongoing concern for anyone in the Pacific Northwest. The bad news component of the wildfire picture involves the smoke that is already in the atmosphere and what happens to it over the coming hours and days. Right now, the smoke signature across the Pacific Northwest is substantial, and that smoke is spreading. As we move through this morning and into the afternoon, smoke is going to continue to push eastward into the Midwest and Central Plains. By this afternoon and evening, if you are anywhere in the Midwest or just south of that cold front, there is a good chance you will see hazy skies. That hazy atmosphere should persist into tomorrow as well. At the surface level, the near-surface smoke density is most problematic for those in the Pacific Northwest itself, where air quality has dropped to very low levels, and outdoor activity is genuinely risky for anyone with respiratory health concerns. For those further east, across the Great Plains and east of the Rockies, most of the smoke is not expected to reach the surface level. However, states including South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa could experience some near-surface smoke in isolated areas, so residents there should remain alert and use caution if you have asthma, COPD, or any other respiratory condition. Limit outdoor time during periods of thicker smoke, keep windows closed if possible, and monitor your local air quality index readings. For the broad central and eastern part of the country, the smoke will largely be an upper-level phenomenon. causing hazy skies and colorful sunsets, but not necessarily creating the kind of surface air quality issues that demand immediate action. It is worth keeping an eye on, but it is not currently the primary health concern for most people east of the Rockies. To bring this whole forecast together, here's the picture over the next 7 days. Today brings cold temperatures and rain for much of the Midwest behind a strong cold front, with a minimal but present isolated severe weather threat near Omaha. Wednesday escalates the flooding concern significantly across the Midwest corridor from Chicago back through Kansas City, with a severe weather window possible Wednesday afternoon and evening. Thursday brings some isolated activity in the northern plains, but generally a quieter picture for the Ohio Valley. The weekend remains the wild card, with the potential for either significant severe weather across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, or a hot and humid pattern with limited storm development, depending on which model solution verifies. The heat dome expansion from the desert southwest through the Rockies into the Great Plains is ongoing and intensifying. However, with the most alarming potential temperatures being projected in Nebraska and western Iowa late in the weekend timeframe, and smoke from Pacific Northwest wildfires will continue to filter through the atmosphere and affect skies across portions of the Midwest and Central Plains. This is a dynamic, evolving, and in several respects genuinely dangerous weather pattern that demands your attention over the next several days. Whether the threat in your area is flash flooding, severe thunderstorms, dangerous heat, or smoke from wildfires, the path through it starts with staying informed and having a plan. Know your flooding action plan. Know where you will shelter if severe weather approaches. Know what your heat safety strategy looks like if temperatures continue to climb toward the extreme values being projected by some models. And keep watching, because as we get closer to the weekend and the models sharpen their solution, we will have updated coverage ready for you. Thank you so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new here and you want to stay ahead of severe weather, extreme heat, and major pattern changes like the one we just walked through, make sure you hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications. That way, when we drop the next update or go live with breaking weather coverage, you will know about it immediately. We are going to keep watching this pattern closely as it evolves over the next several days, and there will be more updates coming your way very soon. Stay weather aware out there, stay safe, and we will see you in the next video or live stream.